Have you ever had a heightened fear that may or has posed as a threat to your child's emotional, physical or mental well-being? Perhaps your child is experiencing heightened sensitivities that could trigger their response to situations where there is a threat to their physical safety if unacknowledged, or their confidence or trust in others to feel seen or heard has created a sense of vulnerability for them, or maybe for you as a parent to manage the situation. All in all, having a knock-on effect on their mental well-being and their overall experience whilst in school and engaging in activities. This video is for parents raising children with individual needs and differences, perhaps like autism or other neurodiverse needs, or even a medical or physical condition, so that they can stay empowered whilst they navigate through procedural challenges as they advocate for their children within their education and their development. And in this video, I want to talk about safety and how as a parent to stay feeling content for the rest of the day when you've let your child go off to school, especially when you might be experiencing a fear that their safety may be in jeopardy. I want to share my experiences as a parent raising my son who's got autism and ADHD and how I've managed my emotions during those particular times, and also to recognise what is important when fear starts to hit. During those early years of education, my son was known as an absconder or an escapee, call it what you will. This meant that his heightened sensitivities around sounds and smells had an impact on how he would manage himself within certain environments, which also had an impact on how he would engage in his learning. And during my time working in local communities, I've been on several safeguarding training courses that specify how young people living with disabilities are highly likely to be one of the main groups of young people receptive to safeguarding queries when known to professionals working with them. And this has left me feeling content in the knowing that there are policies and procedures and frameworks that are available to protect young people whilst they engage in services and work with professionals within the communities, in their schools, etc. So what is safeguarding? Safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children is everyone's responsibility. Everyone who comes into contact with children and their families has a role to play. In order to fulfil the responsibility effectively, all practitioners should make sure their approach is child-centred. This means that they should consider at all times what is the best interest of the child. When this goes well, it does help knowing that this is in place. So when thinking about our children, what does safety look like? So when looking at emotional safety and physical safety, this is what it means. You want to make sure that they are emotionally safe to share their thoughts and feelings and have their abilities and challenges acknowledged and recognised. When it is worked, a child is able to feel confident to approach teachers, request support independently, build on trust and relationship. Physically, you want your child to access a safe space, to regulate their feelings away from hazardous areas, and to feel safe in the company of others. When it works well, a child is aware of locations in the building that they can stay and trusts that teachers and professionals can assist and guide them along the way. So I want to share a copy of an email that I found, sharing my experiences 9 years ago when my son was in a situation where his safety was in jeopardy. And I want to talk about how the procedures at that time didn't necessarily work so well and had an impact on how I managed things in that particular scenario. That afternoon, my son informed me that when the teaching assistant demanded that he should do what she asked him to do, my son resisted. Therefore, she grabbed him, pinched his back very hard, so much so that he cried out that she was hurting him. And when he spoke to his peers about what had happened, the teacher at the time addressed the pupils to ignore him. As a parent, I am very concerned that the investigation has failed to recognise the devastating emotional impact that the situation had on my child. To bring context to the situation, at the time the school had stated that they would not be able to meet the needs of my son, and I raised this concern with a Laddo. So what is a Laddo? A Laddo is responsible for coordinating the response to concerns that an adult who has worked with children may have caused them or could cause them harm. The outcome to my concern was a phone call from the Laddo letting me know that I was being unreasonable and that I should work with the school because the school were doing the best that they could. Now, I would like to know what your experiences are, if you've ever experienced anything like this or perhaps had any involvement in working with a Laddo. For me, it was a very disappointing experience because it demonstrated how a young person's voice wasn't heard, it wasn't acknowledged, and it wasn't recognised in that particular moment. Which brings me on to frustration. Perhaps you've attempted to initiate conversation. Maybe you've sent emails asking for clarity, options, or support. However, there has been no action or delay to your response. Delays could be due to a lack of resources, professional availability. Maybe the staff turnover for a school SENCO or teaching assistant or a special educational needs officer at the local authority has been a reoccurrence, which has been my experience. All led to information not getting to the right place at the right time when needed. So feeling empowered whilst the threat of your child's safety is in jeopardy is not easy. I don't know about you, but there's so much layers to this special educational needs journey and lots of things to consider in those particular crucial moments. So what I've learned is, whilst you're having those conversations, you're engaging in those dialogues about something so important like that, it really does help to avoid these particular 3 conversations. And the first thing is blame. Blame about where was the teacher, because at the same time it could be on the other side as well, like where was the parent. Those questions would benefit being answered and dealt with before the event. So in the event, it doesn't make any sense in engaging it. Solutions happen in written form when you're engaging in meetings, when the things are done and where the information needs to be at that moment in time. The negative impact of this is that things go round in circles. There's no solution. The negative repercussions is that it delays the situation. The second thing is surrendering. When I talk about surrendering, I'm talking about in that moment when something has happened, you might hear communication explaining that, well, that's why we can't manage the situation. That's why this young person shouldn't be in this school. I told you so. This is the reason for. Because it's a perfect opportunity to justify why things are the way they are. There is no reason for things being the way they are if your son is feeling emotionally unsafe or physically unsafe and their mental well-being is at risk. If you're looking for reasons, then reasonable adjustments should be in place. And then the third thing to avoid in conversations are around the child. Well, if the child had done what they're supposed to do, it wouldn't have happened. Well, the child or the young person is a type of child that does that, therefore justifying why things are the way they are. And that's another thing in those moments where you don't need to pay focus or attention to those things because you will go around in circles. And all I'm saying is pay attention to when you're having a conversation in that moment, because how you respond will have an impact on how others will respond. And we want the right response. We want solutions. We don't want blame. We don't want a reason to not do anything. And we don't want the child's self-esteem to be damaged. And as parents, our role is to safeguard our children. And we don't need to be told that, as I'm sure you would agree. So when a situation poses a threat to their overall well-being, it's really important to stay vigilant. Some people may have an awareness of safeguarding where social services are involved with the family and the children because there is questions around how a family supports a young person. Safeguarding, as it mentions, is a responsibility for all. It can't only be for one and not the other. At the end of the day, a child needs to be safe. And it's so important that everyone that deals with a child is aware of that, whether they are the parent, whether they are professionals. So I'd love to know your comments about what I've discussed today. Why not leave a comment or even think of subscribing? Now, I will leave you to continue doing what you're doing. Stay focused, stay empowered, and keep creating progress. Thank you for listening.